My parents sold my childhood home while I was paying their debts, so I bought it back from the new owners and made them tenants. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and my childhood home wasn't just a place. It was the only constant in a family that treated me like a burden. The walls of that house held more warmth than my parents ever did. My grandfather built it with his own hands, brick by brick, back when family still meant something. I remember the faint creak of the wooden floors, the smell of my mom's burnt toast in the mornings, and the way sunlight would pour through the kitchen window every Saturday. That place was safety. Even when my parents yelled, even when my sister got away with everything, I'd go sit on the back porch steps and remind myself, this is home. As I got older, the shouting got louder, and affection turned into obligation. My parents weren't cruel in an obvious way, they just made me feel like I owed them my existence. When I left for college, I thought distance would bring peace. Instead, it brought guilt. Every few months, I'd get a call from my mother, her voice soft and rehearsed. "Honey, we're struggling with the mortgage again. Could you send a little help?" At first, it was small, covering utilities, groceries, or loan payments. But it became a routine. I was working full-time, barely saving anything, yet every extra dollar went back home. Family comes first, my dad used to say, and I wanted to believe that meant mutual care, not one-sided sacrifice. Eventually, things seemed stable. They said the debts were nearly gone, and I felt proud, like maybe I'd finally made them proud too. For the first time in years, life felt balanced. Then one evening, as I was finishing dinner in my apartment, my phone buzzed with a message that would destroy that illusion. It was from a childhood neighbor. The text was short but sharp. "Hey, did your parents finally sell the house?" The fork slipped from my hand. "Sell the house? My house?" I told myself it had to be a mistake. But deep down, something cold in my chest whispered, it wasn't. I stared at that text for a full minute, my mind refusing to process it. Sell the house? No way. My parents would have told me, after all, I'd been sending them money for years to keep that place afloat. I tried calling my mom first. No answer. Then my dad. Straight to voicemail. My stomach tightened with every unanswered ring. Finally, I called the neighbor back. "Yeah," she said casually. "I saw a moving truck a few days ago. New couple's moving in next week. Guess they sold it fast." The world around me just muted. I could still hear her talking, but it felt like I was underwater. I thanked her weakly and hung up. My hands were shaking when I opened my laptop and searched the county property records. It didn't take long, there it was. My childhood address, listed as sold. A completed transaction. My parents' names nowhere to be found. I don't remember breathing. I just sat there staring at the screen, scrolling through the sale details like it would somehow change if I looked hard enough. They hadn't even told me. Not a call, not a text. Nothing. When I finally managed to get through to my mom hours later, she sounded irritated, like I'd interrupted her nap. "Why are you overreacting?" she said. "We had no choice. We were drowning in bills." "What bills?" I asked, my voice cracking. "I've been paying the bills." "Well, it wasn't enough," she snapped. "You don't understand what we're dealing with." I could hear my dad in the background, saying something about me being dramatic, the same word they used when I cried as a kid. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. My pulse was pounding so hard it hurt. That night, I sat alone in my dark apartment, staring at old photos of the house, Christmas mornings, backyard barbecues, the old oak tree I used to climb, and for the first time in my life, I realized something brutal. Maybe home had never been love. Maybe it was just debt with walls. By morning, my confusion had hardened into something sharper, anger. I packed an overnight bag, got in my car, and drove 6 hours straight to my hometown. Every mile I covered, my thoughts replayed like static. They sold it. They sold the only thing that ever meant something to me. When I pulled up to my parents' new rental house, a cramped duplex on the other side of town, it hit me how fast they'd moved on. No for sale sign, no warning, just gone. My mom opened the door, startled. "What are you doing here?" she asked, like I was some stranger at her doorstep. I didn't waste time. "Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded. She sighed, crossing her arms. "We didn't need your permission. It was our house." "My money paid off that house," I shot back. "Every month, every bill. You said it was for the mortgage." My dad appeared behind her, face already tight with irritation. "We were drowning, son. You think a few payments covered everything? Grow up. A few? I laughed bitterly. I sent you half my salary for 5 years. The silence that followed was worse than shouting. My mother finally muttered, "We had no choice. The house was a burden. A burden!" That word lodged in my throat like glass. They sold my home, the only safe space I ever had, and called it a burden. I walked past them into the living room, ignoring their protests. On the wall hung the same family photo that used to be in our old hallway. All smiling faces, lies frozen in time. "You could have told me," I whispered. "You owed me that," my dad scoffed. "You're overreacting. You'll thank us one day. We did what was necessary." I looked at them both, and in that moment, I realized they'd never see what they'd done as betrayal. To them, I was just the reliable one, the backup plan. I walked out without another word, my chest hollow. As the door slammed behind me, one thought burned in my mind. If they could sell my home that easily, what else were they capable of? I couldn't let it go. The anger didn't fade. It curdled into something worse. Curiosity. Because the numbers didn't add up. I'd been sending enough money to cover every bill, every debt. So why did they need to sell the house? That question haunted me for days. Finally, I did what I probably should have done years ago. I started digging. I logged back into the property database, this time checking the buyer's name. When I saw it, my jaw locked. It wasn't a stranger. It was Paul, my mom's cousin. The same guy who used to show up drunk at family gatherings, always bragging about smart investments. He'd bought the house for half its market value. Half. I called him immediately. "Hey, Paul, it's me. Just wanted to ask about the old house." He chuckled. "Oh, that? Yeah, your folks needed quick cash. Said they were in a tough spot. I did them a favor." "A favor?" I repeated, barely keeping my voice steady. "You underpaid by nearly $100,000. He scoffed. "They agreed to it. Maybe you should take it up with them." And then he hung up. My hands were trembling. I called my mother next, demanding an explanation. Her voice turned defensive fast. "It wasn't just about money, okay? Your sister needed help too. What does Emily have to do with this?" "She had debt. Credit cards, medical bills, she's family, we had to help her." I froze. "So you sold our house to bail her out?" My dad cut in, voice raised now. "Enough, don't make this about money. You're successful, you'll be fine. Your sister needed us. It was like being stabbed twice, first by the lie, then by how casual they were about it. Years of sacrifice erased with one sale." I hung up, feeling something inside me break for good. I wasn't just their son anymore. I was their solution, a wallet with feelings they didn't care about. That night, staring at the ceiling of my apartment, one thought echoed again and again. They didn't lose their home. They sold mine. After that call, something inside me went quiet, not peaceful but numb. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always explode. Sometimes it just seeps through you, slow and poisonous. I stopped calling, stopped answering. My parents tried reaching out once or twice, but every message felt transactional. Like they weren't sorry, just uncomfortable with the silence. I started working longer hours. Anything to keep my mind from replaying the lies. Every time I thought about my mother's voice saying, "Your sister needed us," I felt my stomach twist. Emily had always been the favorite, the golden child who never faced consequences. When I got straight A's, it was expected. When she passed a class, it was a miracle worth celebrating. I used to think that was normal. Now I saw it for what it was, conditioning. Weeks passed, and I noticed I couldn't even look at family photos anymore. The memories hurt differently now. Every image felt like a lie preserved in color. That house, my house, had been the only part of my past I thought was safe. And now even that was gone, reduced to a property line under someone else's name. Friends told me to let it go. "It's just a house," one said. But it wasn't. It was proof that I mattered once. Proof that I came from somewhere. And now I didn't know what home meant anymore. One night I stood on my apartment balcony staring out at the city lights, and I said it out loud, just to hear it in the air. I'm done. No more calls. No more money. No more pretending we were a family. But somewhere, deep under that resolve, another voice whispered something darker. A promise, quiet but certain. If I ever get the chance to make things right, I will. I didn't know it then, but that vow would come back to change everything. 2 years passed. I poured everything into my career, building a life completely detached from my family. Success came fast once I stopped bleeding money for them. I bought a car, moved into a better apartment, and started sleeping peacefully again, or at least I thought I did. But some nights, I'd wake up from dreams about that house. I could still smell the sawdust from the porch steps, still hear the floorboards creak outside my old bedroom door. Some wounds don't close, they just wait. Then, one afternoon, fate decided to rip that wound open again. My friend Aaron, a real estate agent, called me out of the blue. "Hey man," he said casually. "Saw a listing today that made me think of you. You grew up on Oak Ridge Drive, right?" My heart stuttered. "Yeah, why?" He paused. "Because your old house just went up for sale." For a second, I couldn't speak. The words didn't make sense. That house, my house, was back on the market. "Who's selling it?" I asked, my voice barely steady. Aaron clicked around his system. "Looks like Paul. The guy who bought it from your folks. Going bankrupt, apparently. The price is low. Real low. I drove there the next morning. The new owners hadn't moved out yet, but the sight of that front gate nearly broke me. The paint was peeling, the porch looked tired, but it was still home. Standing there, I remembered every version of myself that had ever lived inside those walls, naive, loyal, hopeful. And that's when I decided I wasn't just going to buy it. I was going to take it back. Quietly. On my terms. I called Aaron. "Put in an offer," I said. He asked, "You sure you want to do this?" I smiled, though my voice came out like steel. "Yeah, but don't put it under my name, because this wasn't nostalgia anymore." It was reclamation. Aaron handled everything. I created an LLC detached from my name and let him make the offer. Within a week, the deal was accepted. No one knew it was me. Not Paul, not my parents, no one. The day I got the confirmation email that the property had officially transferred, I just sat there staring at the screen, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not joy, exactly. More like quiet, heavy justice. When I went to visit the property again, the front yard was overgrown, the mailbox rusted, the windows grimy. But beneath the decay, I still saw the outlines of what once was. I walked through the creaking door, every sound echoing memories. My dad's voice yelling from the kitchen, my mom humming while folding laundry, my sister laughing down the hall. It all hit at once like ghosts rising from the dust. The living room still had that faint smell of cedar. The height markings on the wall were still there, my handwriting from when I was 8, 10, 12. I traced a finger over them and whispered, "You're mine again." It wasn't about revenge in that moment. It was about reclaiming something they'd taken without remorse. Every inch of that house carried my childhood, my sacrifices, my pain. Now it was back where it belonged. Aaron called later that night, congratulating me. "You did it," he said. "Want me to handle the renovations?" I hesitated. "Not yet," I said. "I need to think." Because as satisfying as it felt, there was an emptiness too. The people who should have shared this with me, the family that should have protected this home, were the very reason I lost it in the first place. Still, as I stood outside under the porch light, keys cold in my hand, one truth cut through the noise. They thought they erased me from this story, but now, I owned the ending. For months, I kept the ownership quiet. The house stayed empty while I made slow repairs, new paint, new locks, new energy. I'd visit every weekend, sometimes just to sit on the back porch and listen to the wind. It felt peaceful for the first time in years. I thought the chapter was closed. Then one evening, my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in months. My mother. I almost ignored it, but something in me said to pick up. Her voice was trembling. "Sweetheart, we're in trouble." Those words hit with the same bitterness as before. I stayed silent. "We lost the place we were renting," she continued. "The landlord raised the rent and we can't afford it. Your dad's hours got cut. We have nowhere to go." I could hear my father in the background muttering something about bad luck. Then she said it, almost pleading, almost rehearsed. "There's this house listed near our old neighborhood. Small but affordable. We're hoping the owner might rent to us short term." I didn't need to ask which house she meant. I knew instantly. My chest tightened. My own parents were about to apply to rent my house. "Send me the listing," I said calmly. She did, and when I opened it, I nearly laughed. There it was, my address. The one I owned under an anonymous LLC. They had no idea. After hanging up, I called Aaron. "You still managing the property?" "Yeah, the rental listing's up. Why?" I just found your tenants, I said. He chuckled. That was fast. Who are they? My parents. There was a long silence on the line. You serious? Completely, I said. Approve them. Treat it like any other lease, but don't mention my name. That night, I sat in the empty living room, imagining them walking through the door again, unaware they'd be paying rent to the son they betrayed. It wasn't revenge yet, but it was justice starting to take shape. The day my parents moved back into my house, I watched from across the street, sitting in my car with tinted windows and an unshakable calm. It was almost surreal, seeing them carry boxes through the same front door they once slammed on me emotionally. My father grumbled about the rent price while my mother fussed about the weeds in the front yard. The irony was so thick it was almost poetic. Aaron handled the paperwork exactly as planned. The lease went through the LLC. They never questioned who owned it. To them, it was just another faceless landlord, another chance to start over. They didn't realize their second chance was built on the ashes of the son they'd burned. At first, I tried to detach emotionally. I told myself it was just business. But every monthly report Aaron sent me stirred something deeper. My parents were late on rent twice in the first 3 months. My dad sent a note complaining about the unfair maintenance fees he never minded when I was the one footing the bills. My mom requested an extension once, claiming unexpected expenses. I approved it silently, watching their own excuses loop back at them like karma on replay. One afternoon, I decided to visit the property under the pretense of a routine inspection. Aaron came along to keep things professional. When my parents opened the door, they didn't recognize me at first. I had sunglasses on, and time had changed me more than I realized. But stepping inside felt like slipping into an old nightmare. Same rooms, same air, but none of the warmth. My mom offered tea, nervous and polite. My dad complained about the plumbing. I kept my responses short, clinical. It was like watching actors recite lines in a play they didn't know I'd written. When we left, Aaron asked quietly, "How'd that feel?" I exhaled slowly, like justice with a heartbeat. But deep down, I knew, the real reckoning hadn't even started yet. 3 months later, my parents missed another payment, this time a full month late. Aaron sent a polite reminder, then another, but they ignored both. When he finally called, my dad got defensive, accusing the landlord of being heartless. That was the final push I needed. The time for quiet lessons was over. It was time to show them exactly who they'd been answering to. I arranged a tenant meeting at a local cafe, claiming the owner wanted to discuss the lease renewal. When they arrived, they looked tense, worn down. My mother's hair had more gray in it. My father's arrogance had dulled into exhaustion. They sat across from me, not recognizing me right away, until I took off my sunglasses. My mother's eyes widened. My father froze mid-breath. "You?" he whispered. I nodded. "Yeah, me." The silence that followed was so thick you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. My mom's lip trembled. You own the house?" "I bought it 2 years ago," I said evenly. "From Paul, with my own money. The same money I once sent you to save it." My father tried to speak, but no words came. My mother started crying, muttering excuses. "We didn't know, we had no choice." I slid a folder across the table. Inside were the property records, payment receipts, and the lease agreement they'd signed. "You sold it cheap," I said quietly. "So I bought it back for full price. Funny how things work out." My dad leaned back, guilt flickering behind his eyes, but pride wouldn't let him stay silent. "So what now? You gonna kick us out? Rub it in?" I met his stare. "No, you can stay, under one condition. You pay your rent on time. No more lies. No more manipulation." He opened his mouth to argue, but my voice cut through him like glass. "You used to say family comes first." I finally agree with my family, me, myself, and my peace. And for the first time in my life, they had nothing left to say. After that meeting, everything changed, but not in the explosive way you'd expect. There wasn't screaming or begging. Just silence. Cold, awkward, necessary silence. My parents went home, my home, without saying much. For the first time, they had to live with the weight of what they'd done, under the roof they once sold to erase me. The rent started coming in on time after that. Every month, a quiet transaction. My mother sometimes sent short formal messages through Aaron like, "Payment completed. Thank you." Not "love you," not "hope you're well." Just business. Exactly what they'd made me feel like for years. My sister, Emily, didn't take it so quietly. She called me one evening furious. "You humiliated them. How could you make mom and dad pay you rent? They're your parents." I let her finish her rant before replying, calm but sharp. "They're also the reason I lost everything I worked for. I'm not punishing them, I'm teaching them what accountability feels like." "You're cruel," she spat. I smiled bitterly. "Cruel? You watched them drain me for years and said nothing. Cruel is pretending that's love." She hung up. She hasn't called since. Over time, the tension became something almost poetic. My father, once full of dominance, now kept his voice low whenever Aaron visited for inspections. My mother, once controlling, asked permission before making small changes, like painting a wall or planting flowers. It wasn't revenge. It was balance. Sometimes I'd drive past the house at night and see the warm glow of lights through the windows. For a brief moment, I'd feel something almost like pity, but then I'd remember every time they made me feel small, disposable, unworthy, and the pity would fade. For the first time, I wasn't the child begging for love. I was the man setting boundaries in the house they once ruled, and somehow that silence between us felt louder than any apology ever could. Months passed, and the dust finally began to settle. My parents stayed in the house quietly, paying rent on time, keeping the place spotless. The same people who once treated it like a burden now handled it like sacred ground. I'd visit occasionally for inspections, brief, polite, emotionless visits. My mom always offered tea. I always declined. We didn't need words anymore. The silence between us said everything. There was no dramatic apology, no teary reunion, just a quiet acknowledgement in their eyes, the kind that comes when denial finally runs out. My dad, once the loudest man I knew, now barely met my gaze. My mother's voice softened whenever she spoke to me, as if she finally realized that I wasn't her backup plan anymore. I was her landlord, her mirror, her consequence. Sometimes I'd sit on the porch alone after they went inside, tracing the grain of the wood beneath my hand. I'd remember being a kid sitting in that exact spot, wishing my parents would see me. Now they finally did, but in a way I never imagined. One evening, as I was locking up, my mom stepped out. She hesitated, then whispered, "You've made the house beautiful again." I nodded. It always was. "You just stopped seeing it." She looked down, tears pooling but unshed. "We didn't deserve your help back then." I smiled faintly. "No," I said, "but I needed to give it anyway. Not for you, for me." Driving away that night, I realized something I never thought I'd feel again. Peace. Not the fragile kind that depends on others, but the solid, earned kind that comes after surviving the storm. The betrayal that once defined me had transformed into clarity. The house was no longer a wound. It was proof of growth, of boundaries, of rebirth. And as the lights of that old home faded in my rearview mirror, I whispered to myself, "Some people inherit houses. Others build their peace from the ruins."